Welcome back, General.
Hey, wait a minute, that's my line. Welcome back, everybody. Today marks the first time, or first episode for the General's Challenge. This is just showing that not all shell maps are created equal. Some of them feel a little bit more low effort, or don't really work. I'm not quite sure what effect they're supposed to try and get out of this. As per the thread, there was some votes as to what generals I would be playing. And the first winner, or at least in the top-down order, since it's just easier for me to pick, I'm going to be playing as the Laser General today. So, for those who don't know, that's General Towns, I think. There's some interesting aspects to the General's Challenge, as well as just how generals work. It surprisingly doesn't really come up at all in the campaign, which you would think it would, just because of how much it upgrades, quote-unquote, the base experience.
Choose your general.
I don't really have a reason to pick hard, and honestly, hard is probably going to be this run is probably going to be the only time I play hard difficulty, just because it's not worth it, and we'll get to see why more and more as these videos progress. You get a general overview of what each general offers. So you have some, and they all sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? They focus on one general aspect of each of those armies.
General Towns versus General Granger.
Bombs away, punk. Be advised, this area is under the control of Air Force General Malcolm Granger. Withdraw now, or prepare to be bombed back to the Stone Age. General, you're no match for me. I own the skies. Watch the skies, General. We're gonna put on an air show.
Let's give him an air show.
Want to see it again?
So as these videos progress, I'll be going into the exact differences that we'll see with General Towns. A lot of it is self-explanatory, just by the units we'll use and so on. But getting into the nitty-gritty will take a little bit, just because I want to cover the generals that we're facing more than the general that we're playing necessarily. So the General Challenge involves having to defeat, I believe it's 8 different generals. You go through the entire list of those that have maps, and then once you get to the end, you defeat an extra boss, we'll call it, and you've completed the challenge. Now, playing on hard, like I said, isn't really worthwhile, just because you don't get anything special out of it, and frankly, it's just annoying. There's something to be said about how fun and interesting the General's Challenge can be, while also being incredibly frustrating because the General's Challenge tends to lean towards focusing on the exact weakness or one specific strategy and then playing it that way only. And what I mean by that is, take for example General Granger here. General Granger is specifically the Air Force General within the US faction. You might be able to figure out what makes him so special. So his Air Force units are stronger. They have some things that are unlocked, etc., etc. So specifically from the guide, the Primo guide that I have, it states that Malcolm Ace Granger, all his aircraft receive laser point defense systems, protecting him against missile and rocket fire. All aircraft are cheaper to create. All vehicles are more expensive to create. Stealth Fighter general ability does not need to be purchased. It's available at mission start. And Crusader tanks and Paladin tanks are not available. King Raptor units are available, and these advanced aircraft carry improved ammunition and are more durable than other aircraft. Essentially, just a better Raptor. Combat Chinooks replaced normal Chinook helicopters. Combat Chinooks allow units inside to fire at enemy targets, making them very similar to the Chinese equivalent. Comanches can be upgraded to have stealth abilities. Spectre gunships require fewer general ranks to obtain and are split into 3 levels. So instead of having just one level of the Spectre, not only do you get to upgrade it 3 times, but each upgrade essentially allows it to stay on the field for longer. I want to say it also has an ability to do more damage or soak up more damage, but I could be wrong on that one.
We drop in.
Also, there's a carpet bomb ability that Granger gets. Now, for exact values, it's easier just to go through the online wiki and looking through there, just because I'm sure that there may have been some changes thanks to patches and so on. When it comes to fighting Granger, you just want anti-air capability. In my case, essentially loading up on as many Avengers as possible is pretty much the only way you really want to play. You will want some ground forces, sure, and that's why I have some Rock Vs and an ambulance. But generally speaking, you don't need much of anything else. There's also a really weird quirk where, in this mission at the very least, Granger just had a hard time replacing his sources of income. Income is very limited, as we've seen before, unless you start building stuff like supply drops and supply drop zones and such. But there are a couple of areas that one would assume the AI would try to expand to, but it doesn't. It kind of just sticks to its base, and then that's about it. It's also why a lot of these videos, and generally the entire combat of the missions, is going to be sped up. Because there's no real sense in showing you guys the painstaking hour that it took for me to essentially beat down the AI. And frankly, there's not much that you can really do to speed up this entire process, in the sense that you eventually will reach a critical mass, whether when you're defending or as you build up, and then you're not guaranteed to win, but you're getting there. So I figured I'd get a Burton, use Colonel Burton to infiltrate the village and try to destroy it that way. Sadly, there's just a lot of detection around, whether it's Patriot missiles or etc. So you can't really do too much with a Burton. There's also not much in the way of getting him experience. Yeah, when there's infantry on the ground, you can build it up that way. But generally speaking, there's not much available to him. So I'm having to essentially run Burton into areas, hope I can shoot and destroy a King Raptor or whatever, and then getting out before he blows up. Unfortunately, he blew up. So
Right here.
And as you might expect, the village and all the buildings within are also loaded with a ton of rocket soldiers, which just makes it hard if you were to only use, say, Humvees and not Avengers as well.
That's a coward's tactic, General.
To make matters worse, General Towns is, as the laser general, you might kind of figure out what that means for him as a character. Essentially, he's just really good at having direct, fast damage against other targets. And the problem is that if you want to use the equivalent that General Towns has for the Crusader tank, it's a laser tank, and it requires power to use. It kind of invalidates the reason why you would use it, because you just don't have, what's the word for it? You would need more territory or just space to build more power plants. You need more money to build those power plants, and then you need to build multiple war factories to essentially just blitz as many laser crusaders as you can, and it just doesn't really work out that way.
Right here. Let's get
Scanning for enemy aircraft.
Now, thankfully, you don't have to destroy everything or every unit, just the major buildings. So, for example, if there's still a supply center intact or a power plant, you need to destroy those, and once that's done, you can you'll win.
Targeting ready. Scanning for enemy aircraft. Yes, sir.
Particle cannon ready.
Train for perfection. Come on.
So, because of the whole fact that General Granger is very much focused on air, if you're going to play this whatsoever, definitely focus intensely and immediately on anti-air capabilities. It's hard to really suggest how to play all the different generals against something like this, just because, one, I haven't done it, or at least it's been a long time, and two, I don't know all the intricacies with the matchups.
General Towns versus General Kwai.
My armor will crush your pathetic forces. This area was once fertile farmland. Soon your blood will make it fertile again. Soon
New
we
construction.
will remove you from our
Always
lands.
ready. Hurry. Made in the U.S. of A.
I don't believe that the generals always say the same thing on the opening crawl there. However, it will be the same sort of show. So, and you can't skip it. So,
Wanna make some
get in the habit of saving if you don't want to see it.
new construction.
So in the previous mission or challenge, we focused entirely on anti-air weaponry, which means focusing entirely on Avengers, getting a couple units to just patronize whatever infantry might be sent our way. And in this instance, we're doing the almost exact opposite.
Your supply pile looks low. Now nothing can stop us.
We are going to see some air in the guise of MiGs, but that's about it. It's pretty obvious that the general, the Chinese tank general, would be focusing on vehicles. So I went with fire bases first, specifically because, one, the long-range power is nice, but more specifically because they offer enough protection to the rocket soldiers that I don't need to babysit them. They'll spend enough time essentially, generating aggro, I guess we'll call it, that I don't really have to worry about tanks trying to circumvent the area. Also, the large airfield size is really screwing me over.
Made in the U.S. of A. Laying the foundation. New construction.
Here we come, General. I hope your defenses are up.
Laying the foundation. Keep 'em busy.
I'm sure there's enough people asking why exactly would a general that, for example, General Granger, that just has like a flyby of 12 or 15 King Raptors, why that would ever make any sense, because you would think that you would just immediately bomb your opponent and win.
That one's done.
there's like just like a counterintuitive build-up for the AI to go through. Like, I get it's for, helping you out, you the player, and allowing you to build up, but it always struck me as odd because, well,
More tanks!
why not just have it like as a different setup with less build-up, but they have kind of a planned hierarchy of construction?
Sorry, I can't build it. Made in the
It would certainly feel more organic rather than how it's incredibly forced here.
Keep 'em busy. Good area.
And I know I've mentioned it before, but it kind of speaks to why the general challenges can be fun, but are also kind of boring. They force you into a long strategy, regardless of what general you use. There's not really a way to quote-unquote speed run anything, because the simple destruction of, say, a command center isn't enough to force them to sell all their structures or something. You still have to go and destroy everything. Well, every building anyways.
In the U.S. of A.
So even if you could just spawn, 1,000 tanks behind them, or, well, maybe that's a little excessive, but if you could spawn a lot of units, free or otherwise, behind them and into their base, that doesn't necessarily mean that you could take out their entire base. It is hard difficulty where the AI gets all of the damage benefits, whether it's received or given.
I see you haven't run in fear, General. Soon, you'll wish you had. Right here.
I picked the wrong strategy here as well, and I'm going to be changing it. There's not much of a reason not to pick the range option for two reasons. One, rocket soldiers are just really strong, and there's no reason to not give them some extra range. You don't necessarily want Chinese units to get in range to shoot at you anyways. If you can blow them up before they ever shoot you, it just means you last longer, rather than inviting them next to you and then taking damage. There's also just the case of there's a couple defenses, or there's a defense that shoots fast enough that the range really benefits it anyways. So the regular missile Patriot is replaced by the, I guess, laser Patriot they call it,
U.S. of A.
and it kind of achieves the same goals. I believe laser Patriots can zap missiles as they fly around, but more specifically, they just do a lot of damage, and a lot of damage in quick succession. So the range benefit just ends up being better. It's not like they will have their speed of attack impacted. So by allowing them to shoot before enemy units get in range, yada, we've been over this.
Let's pop some tanks.
It also hits ground and air units, so really the only reason why I don't build them first is because they drain power, which is a larger cost overall.
This is the part of the battle I enjoy the most. The part just before I finish off my enemy.
What's the story? Gonna be like new.
Once we build up enough of a defense, essentially I'll be going into, or transitioning to super weapons, because frankly, trying to plow through the enemy defenses as general towns is just kind of tough in general.
Got my missile launcher.
I'd much prefer just using superpowers to sort of take out power, destroy production, etc., etc.
Congratulations, General. You have been promoted.
Speaking of generals as well, let me get to General Kwai. So first and foremost, his tanks all start at veteran level, which is pretty handy. His tanks are cheaper to build, aircraft are more expensive to build, nuke cannons and inferno cannons are not available. The Emperor tank replaces the Overlord, The advanced version of the Overlord comes with a propaganda tower already in place and can be upgraded to carry a Gatling cannon. Tank Drop is available as a general ability. This is identical to Pyro Drop, but drops Battlemaster tanks instead of infantry, which is really powerful. Autoloader upgrade allows tanks to shoot more often. Infantry are also more expensive to create, and the Battlemaster Training General's ability causes these tanks to be built as elite veterans. So instead of starting as veteran, you get 2 ranks immediately, which frankly is very strong. I hope the very limited glimpses of the of our gunship also just kind of show how impractical it would be to attack this. The Laser Crusaders, as mentioned, soak up a lot of power, so I can either get something where I need to invest a lot more money, or I can just build superpowers, and it's kind of a guaranteed effect. Whereas if I build tanks, I then have to go through bunkers and Gatling cannons, or Gatling turrets, I should say, and have to go through them and hope that I can get some damage done. Whereas Particle Cannon, I can just blow them up from behind and sort of fire and forget. If I had tanks of my own, maybe it'd be more worthwhile, but sadly not the case. And the fact that the gunship just kind of shows up and immediately dies is indicative of the higher level difficulty and why it's very tough to get anything, get any sort of results out of it. The AI has enough money that it doesn't really, losing units doesn't really matter all that much to it. And then there's just stuff like Colonel Burton getting sniped by a passing unit because it has a propaganda tower on it. Now I'm going to try and use a bunch of rock fees, and I was hoping that I could maybe destroy the power and knock that out, but they've just been really, really busy with building everything. Or rebuilding all the power plants I destroyed. To the point where I get nothing done with any of my support abilities.
Oh yeah, looks like a good run. Got room for 5. Let's go for it.
And then, I don't know, they just sort of show up as if they knew I was going to attack from here, or maybe this was always going to be their plan, but I understand that Rock V's aren't the strongest, but that just didn't really seem like the investment was worthwhile.
Particle cannon ready. Particle cannon.
Now, thankfully for me, it looks like I destroyed literally every dozer that the general has had, just like lying around. So I should be fine now. Should be. And yeah, I grabbed some snipers because it's just easier that way to deal with some of the infantry. If I happen to lose a laser patriot for whatever reason, either a microwave tanks or etc., I can at least use or have the snipers take out the infantry and not have to worry about it too much.
Tanks are massing our base, preparing for the final assault. Will your defenses hold this time? All units, attack!
I'm not quite sure why he wasn't using the internet center, but whatever, I'll take it. Sometimes life just isn't fair.
No obstacles.
Oh, so I think this is my 3rd or 4th Burton. There's just not much you can get done. The map is open enough or long enough that trying to sneak Burton the entire way
Keep him busy.
over flat ground against, you know, areas that typically have Overlord tanks and whatever else as propaganda towers and Gatling cannons just fly around. Just ends up being
Nice base, General.
annoying, to say the least.
Check out on this dumb missile.
Train for perfection. Where are we going?
Clocked in. I'll build anywhere.
This will be your last chance to prove yourself, General. Soon my tanks will end your pitiful army.
Buck it up. Come on in. Keep the change. How about a lift? Rip it up. Chew on these. Buck it up. Got room for 5.
Unit lost.
Humvee here. Let's go for it.
It's pretty special to see that a microwave tank can technically juggle 2 vehicles.
Come on in. Rip it up.
This spells your doom, General.
Buck it up. Got room for 5. It should be fun.
Unit lost.
Come on in. Buck it up. Buck
Cleared
it up.
for engagement.
Particle
You cannot believe your luck will hold out much longer, can you, General?
Buck it up.
Deadly efficient.
Humvee here.
And unfortunately for me, there just happens to be 1 power plant left.
How about a lift?
Defensive laser
Buck it up.
systems.
Buck it up.
Targeting cursors set.
particle cannon ready.
Analyzing terrain effects.
I'm not sure if I showed it in the previous general, where I wouldn't say it's a bug, but there's an interesting thing about destroying or defeating a general.
We're in your base, General. Your defenses were inadequate.
I think it's the next one.
You are victorious.
You may have defeated my tanks, General, but the Tigress will crush you like an insect.